Whether you're already a big shot or jumpstarting your Flesh and Blood journey, welcome to the channel. If you've ever played Flesh and Blood, you probably know that this game is simple to pick up, but deep to master. Flesh and Blood rewards player skill and strategy like no other, but what does it take to become better, or even the best, at this game? Improving at Flesh and Blood, let alone anything, can be a daunting process. Thankfully, you're not alone, and today's video is 100% focused on the improvement process. I'll be covering each stage of improvement in Flesh and Blood to help you level up your gameplay. No matter your current level of experience, this roadmap will help guide you from your first game of Flesh and Blood to competing at the highest levels of competitive play. The phases covered in this video are the same ones I followed to improve my own gameplay. These skills took me from a 0-3-1 record at my first armory to placing in the top 48 at the Calling Minneapolis, a tournament with more than 550 players. While this journey occurred over a span of 2.5 years, knowing the tips I'm about to share with you would have significantly revved up my improvement process. However, I've had a ton of fun and made dozens of friends along the way, and I hope you do too along your Fab journey. If you're ready, let's get started. To help visualize the improvement process, I've created something that I like to call the Fablo hierarchy of needs. This framework is broken down into manageable steps, starting with the basic fundamentals and progressing through hero familiarity, matchups, growth, and culminating in self-actualization or competitive mastery. Just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, each tier builds upon the previous ones, and you'll need to solidify the supporting skills before you can thrive in your current phase. At times during this process, you may find your rate of improvement slowing down, but that's okay. Hitting plateaus is a natural and expected part of the process. If you're stuck at any point, I'll walk you through key skills and practical tips to help you overcome any plateaus. You can even come back to this video at any point in time on your journey to continue improving. And keep in mind that the higher you climb, the more rewarding the journey becomes. With the structure laid out, let's kick things off with the first stage, the basic fundamentals. At the very base of the Fablo hierarchy of needs are the basic fundamentals. Think of these as the foundation on which everything else is built. Here, your goal is to learn the rules and core mechanics of the game, including but not limited to turn structure, attacking, and blocking. This also involves utilizing your hero's ability and weapon, as well as playing your cards in the right order. No matter which hero you choose, these are the building blocks of every game of Flesh and Blood, and the more you practice, the more you'll improve over time. So, how do you practice these fundamentals? Well, the First Strike Blitz decks are my top recommendation, as they're specifically designed to streamline the learning process. On top of that, Aurora and Terra are evenly matched, meaning you could pick these up with a friend to learn the game together, making the process even more enjoyable. If you gravitate towards Aurora, you'll most likely enjoy other aggressive heroes who can match Aurora's lightning-fast speed. On the other hand, Terra offers a more defensive playstyle, offering mighty fun for players who enjoy controlling the pace by sending big disruptive attacks. By playing these decks, you'll begin to build a strong foundation. While Aurora and Terra are excellent starting points, there's a wide variety of heroes to try out. With 10 primary classes and a deep talent system to explore, trial and error at this point will help you to discover your personal playstyle and choose a hero that most resonates with you. In order to do this, I recommend trying out the Blitz pre-constructed decks. Much like the First Strike decks, they're relatively balanced and they're a great budget option to help you get a feel for the different classes and talents in the game. If you're ready to try out Classic Constructed, the Armory decks are a great step up from the pre-constructed Blitz decks. These 60-card decks often have returning staples as well as brand new power cards, making them a great pickup at any stage in your journey. Once you've decided on your hero, the most valuable skill you can develop is turn cycle efficiency, because you only draw up to your intellect at the end of your turn. Besides the first turn of the game or turn 0, it's important to use your hand wisely, ending each turn cycle with the fewest leftover resources and cards in hand after arsenaling a card. In other words, turn cycle efficiency involves blocking on your opponent's turn while still dealing as much damage as possible on yours. By maximizing your hand's value each turn cycle, you'll begin to pick up small edges that will add up over the course of the game. One of the most common mistakes I see from new players is blocking damage that otherwise doesn't have any negative on-hit effects. Because each card in Flesh and Blood can be used to attack, defend, or pitch for resources, blocking means that you can no longer use that card offensively. Even if you block every attack that your opponent throws at you, you'll eventually find yourself running out of cards in your deck. This makes it even more important to decide blocks based on your offensive plan each turn cycle. It's often worth taking some damage if it means you can send back even more on your own turn. However, if your hand is better at blocking, or if you can't utilize your entire hand offensively, it's perfectly fine to block in order to preserve your life total for future turns. Much like the cards in deck, your starting equipment is also a limited resource. Learning how to maximize armor blocks can significantly improve the outcomes of your games. Rather than using it immediately, try to save armor blocks for attacks with devastating on-hit effects or prevent otherwise game-ending damage. Finding the right balance is a foundational skill to develop early on in your Flesh and Blood journey. While practicing these fundamentals, it's important to remember that mistakes are part of the process. Instead of being hard on yourself, treat slip-ups as opportunities to grow and take time to reflect on what went well. Celebrating small wins will help you recognize the progress you're making as a player. If you're unsure where things went wrong, don't hesitate to ask your opponents for feedback. Most Flesh and Blood players are more than happy to give advice after your games. And speaking from personal experience, post-game conversations have been some of my greatest catalysts for improving as a player. During the hero familiarity stage at level 2, you've already built a strong foundation, and now it's time to become more familiar with your hero. If you haven't already, I recommend choosing a single hero to continue this process. Choosing a character that you like that also aligns with your preferred playstyle will help make the process even more enjoyable. Because each character plays so differently, sticking to one hero will help you narrow down your focus, allowing you to improve more quickly. Your primary goal at this level is to build good habits. As you get more familiar with your hero, you'll be able to evaluate turn cycles faster. In fact, you may even find optimal playlines that you'd never considered before. You'll also be more confident when deciding how to attack and defend each turn cycle, maximizing your hero's strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. While the phrase "practice makes perfect" is a common cliché, I prefer the modified version. Perfect practice makes perfect. At this stage, I recommend approaching each game with a specific goal in mind. For example, you could practice remembering Fyendal's Spring Tunic at the start of each turn, improving your arsenal targets, or even playing around disruptive cards like Command and Conquer to protect your arsenal. As you continue to improve through targeted practice, your growth as a player should start to show. However, remember that growth doesn't always appear linearly. Some days may feel like plateaus or even setbacks, but be gentle on yourself. Know that as long as you're learning, you're continuing to grow as a player. Rather than fixating on things you can't control, maintain a growth mindset and focus on areas of improvement instead. Even if you were paired into stronger opponents throughout an event, think about how you could have improved your play and continue asking your opponents for feedback after each game. As long as you keep learning and working on your areas of improvement, you'll eventually notice small changes turn into significant improvements. After you become more familiar with your hero and are comfortable with how they play, the next step is to understand how to play your hero against the overall meta. At this point, you should start to have a good idea of which heroes are easier as well as which ones are more challenging matchups. To improve at this phase, you should start thinking about how to adjust your playstyle to gain edges in specific matchups. For instance, should you try to rush down your opponent's life totals, or pitch your power cards for a stronger second cycle? On top of that, you should begin developing sideboard plans to more effectively address the meta. Are there cards you can use to counter specific threats? For example, if you expect a lot of Enigma, you may want to bring Vambrace of Determination. It only takes up one sideboard slot, but its ability could potentially improve your matchup significantly. With every expansion, continue evaluating the cards available to your hero. Leveraging the best tools available for the changing meta is crucial for maximizing your win rate across the entire field. This phase requires continuous trial and error, but experiment with different strategies and find out what works best for you. While trial and error are important during this phase, one common mistake is adjusting your deck too drastically. While swapping blue resources for red power cards may seem like a good way to power up your deck, it can actually reduce the odds that you have enough resources to play those power cards effectively. Similarly, swapping attacks for non-attack actions can reduce your overall damage output. Increasing item counts can also lower your overall defenses, making you susceptible to aggression. Keep in mind that all cards in your deck should be balanced to make sure you have the right amount of damage, defense, and resources to play with your hero effectively. If you feel comfortable with your sideboard, but a hero continues to be challenging, perfect practice means prioritizing that matchup more often. Even if it feels like a 40-60 matchup in your opponent's favor, focused practice will help you pick up small habits that can swing the odds closer to your favor. Over time, you'll start recognizing key cards to play around and develop counter strategies to improve even your worst matchups. While it may seem like an uphill battle, improving a 40-60 matchup to a 45-55 can have a big impact, especially in large tournaments, where having targeted repetitions against your harder matchups can be the deciding factor between winning and losing. At this stage, there are plenty of resources available to help you improve. Fabrary's meta tool can help you to evaluate your hero's matchup spread, and furthermore, deck lists and sideboard guides can help you figure out which cards to bring in for each matchup. Additionally, online platforms like YouTube and Discord offer opportunities to learn from other players, exchange ideas, and stay up to date on the meta. Another great way to improve is to record and review your matches to address mistakes in your own gameplay. If you don't have a way to do this, watching other players can be a similarly great way to improve. One resource I recommend is Eye of Ophidia, which is a phenomenal resource for finding professional matches online. Evaluating how other people pilot the same hero as you can help you to identify strategies to help improve your matchups, as well as identify gaps in your decision making. The growth phase marks an important turning point in your Flesh and Blood journey. At this level, you're likely winning difficult matchups more consistently, and your losses often come down to smaller life discrepancies. Familiarity with your hero, deck, and sideboard allow you to adapt to new situations more effectively. However, this phase is also one of the most challenging. Earlier levels required you to develop concrete skills, but improvement now is much less objective and more nuanced. While you're still utilizing all of those skills you've developed, your focus now shifts towards nuanced decision-making and situational awareness throughout games. Continued growth involves improving your ability to evaluate game states against any hero at every point of the game. The sheer variety of matchups and game states may seem daunting, but deliberate targeted practice continues to be key. While you can't prepare for every possible scenario, focus on what you need to do in order to win the game. Equally important, recognize that disrupting your opponent's strategy can often outweigh advancing your own. Practice identifying your opponent's win conditions and develop strategies to disrupt them. Knowing how to evaluate who's ahead at any given moment will help you to identify whether you should strive to maintain your lead or take calculated risks to turn the game in your favor. Increasing your win percentage may require you to make tough plays that seem suboptimal at first, but rather maximize your long-term value. For instance, you may find yourself arsenaling red 0 to 60s, which decrease your damage in a turn cycle by 4, but instead increase your odds of playing a maximum velocity for 10 alongside it when you draw it on a later turn. You're also developing macro strategies based on the broader game state. This involves tracking which cards have already been exhausted in both decks, as well as which threats still remain. For instance, in some situations, you may not be able to safely arsenal the 0 to 60 against a new, who still has Leave No Witnesses, Command and Conquers, or even a codex to bring the Leave No Witnesses and Command and Conquers back from the graveyard. Remember that reaching this phase is a significant achievement to be proud of. It reflects the continued effort and dedication you've put towards improving at the game. Take a moment to appreciate how far you've come, from learning how to attack and block to executing complex and nuanced strategies. While improvement is an ongoing process, each game, win or lose, is a testament to the hard work you've already invested in the game. Celebrate your growth and continue to embrace the journey. Congratulations! If you've achieved self-actualization, you've successfully reached the summit, reflecting your deep understanding, adaptability, and dedication to Flesh and Blood. At this level, your mastery of your hero and the game as a whole is clear. Reaching the peak is less about perfection and more about embracing the growing and ever-changing nature of the game. The beauty of the self-actualization journey lies in the journey itself, with new heroes, cards, and strategies to constantly explore. This stage is about innovation and creativity. You'll explore untested strategies, experiment with unconventional cards, and question what's viable, even if it means taking a few steps back before making leaps and bounds forward. But remember that just because something has been deemed good or bad in the past doesn't mean it will always hold true, especially as new cards and mechanics continue to change the game. Think of Michael Hamilton's Bullander list that took Worlds by storm in 2022, or Shomo Yamamura's Azuri list that defied expectations when new seemed to be the stronger choice. These moments show that self-actualization isn't just about following convention, but seeing challenges as opportunities to rise to the occasion. Fab is more than a card game. It's a lifelong opportunity for us to continue to come together in the flesh and blood through the common language of playing great games. Whether you're just starting out or pushing the limits of what's possible, every step of your journey has value. Remember to celebrate your progress, support the people around you, and stay open to learning, Remember that improvement is not a destination, but a mindset. But that's all for me today. Thanks for watching, and I'll teach you in the next one.